Mr. Chair, I have 7:05. You will be getting one more person at least, but they're not here as of yet, but you do have a quorum. The floor is yours.
Okay, call the meeting order at 7:04, and we'll start off with roll call.
Jessica Steinhardt.
April Seaworth.
David Schwartz.
Brandon Weinbaum.
Chris Gombieski,
Adam Wallace.
and looking, like an approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, if I might, on the approval of the agenda, I would like to swap out a couple things. I would like to delete item 7, and that will be renoticed and reset for the next meeting. And also, under item 6, letter C would also ask to be deleted, and that will happen at the next meeting. And then also, since the applicant is not here for that, at 10415, I would like to make that the last item on the agenda before public participation to allow a chance for them to show up.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to delete matter 7, or table matter 7 till the next meeting, table item 6C until the next meeting, and move item 5 down to right above item 8, public participation.
Mr. Chair, before you get a second to Adam's motion, could I suggest they just withdraw item 7 and we'll renotice it, and I'll put, you don't have to table that.
Withdraw item 7?
Withdraw item 7 and then.
Okay, so motion to withdraw item 7,
Table item C.
table item 6C, and move item 5 till the end. So essentially swapping 6A and B with matter 5. And move to approve the agenda on that with those modifications. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, and approval of the minutes from September 29th, 2025.
I move to approve the minutes.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, so, new matter number 5, matter of discussion of the stormwater ordinance.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I'd like to introduce Brad Brickle. He is from Nowak and Kraus. He's our city engineer. And he has a presentation, which I will try to click on when he wants me to, that he's going to go through and explain a little bit about things. You will likely see him back again before we do the stormwater ordinance, like finalize our proposed ordinance. And for any questions or things that come up, and comments or questions that you relate to me, I will relay to him, and he'll have the information when he comes to the next meeting, or I'll have it after having a conversation with him. Because it's in the interest of moving forward, but it's also in the interest of getting the correct information so you all can make an informed decision as to what you would like to do. So having said that, Brad, the floor is yours.
Great, good evening. Thank you for having me. As Hank mentioned, we were asked earlier in the year to put on a presentation, which this presentation has been put on to the City Commission already. Some of you guys know that, obviously. And so I'll do a quick overview of it. But essentially what we are engaged to do is we understand, the city understands there's been some drainage issues in some of these rear yards. The issue that we're seeing is a lot of this is, these are older developments, right? They're essentially subdivisions that weren't subdivisions. That was back before stormwater quality. A lot of these cities and villas, rear yard drainage wasn't a thing. So what we're seeing is on a lot of these large streets is there's a low drainage in the backyard, right? Everything kind of follows the road. So it drains down. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is the low yard of that block is essentially where all the water collects. So as you can see in some of the pictures, you can see there, here's some instances. Some of them are very significant of where these are the low end of the block. So what we've been asked to do is, the city wanted to be, listen to the residents and kind of see what solutions are out there. What are other communities doing that are in the combined sewer district like yourselves? And, kind of see where to go forward and make some recommendations. So I actually assist in the city of Royal Oak. I do a lot of plot plan designs, just like this in city of Birmingham, city of Berkeley. So all the communities that I'm going to show you and highlight what they do for their stormwater management practices for residential are essentially what I've designed. So I'm very well aware of the requirements. So some of the pros to, introducing rear yard drainage. Obviously, an easy one, it reduces the impact or the ponding, alleviates stress on structural foundations. If you have all that water just sitting back there, a lot of these older basements and things, if they have cracks, if it's sitting around there, it can get down there and work itself through the basement walls. And obviously, yard aesthetics and functional concerns. Some of these yards that were in the previous picture, you're out there in the summer, you're trying to have a good time, you can't because you're underwater back there. The cons, and this is why your ordinance was written the way it was, and a lot of them were, when you had a combined sewer district, what you don't want to do is add a whole bunch of water into your combined system and then surcharge and flood basements, right? So that's the big concern and why everyone's done what they've done. Since then, there's been a lot of, technology out there. There's a different way of looking at how we hold stormwater. And the group that representative behind me, they'll be showing kind of their method for handling stormwater that's different than what I'm kind of outlining. These are more conventional things that I'm going to go over tonight. So as I said, a con is increased sewer demand. So if you're taking that water that sits and just dissipates in the ground over a long period of time, I'm not sure how many of you know, but I imagine you do, the east side of town from Huntington East is all sand for the most part, right? So that drains very well. We typically don't have concerns over their issues, but everything west, you tend to get into more clay soil. So obviously it doesn't allow for infiltration into the ground. Some other things that have kind of happened over the years is where these guys have kind of been more involved is the county's changed their stormwater standards. So what they're promoting is more infiltration into the ground, finding ways to not just take the water, put it in the sewer and, essentially impact your systems. So infiltration is becoming a bigger thing that we're trying to look for. And I'll kind of get in that more. Go ahead, next slide. So some of the solutions are, catch basins. You can just go ahead and click them all here. French drain and leaching basin. So obviously everyone's very familiar with the conventional catch basin. You see them in the roads, you see them, pretty much everywhere at low point areas. These are more landscape ones where they're a little smaller, so they look a little better and hide within the rear yard landscaping. Another one is a French drain. So the nice thing about a French drain, typically where we'll put them, a lot of these yards are existing condition lots. So when you put in a catch basin in the backyard, you've got to create a low point for that whole backyard. So there's a lot of regrading. I'm sorry, I'll wait for you. In those rear yards, when you have a catch basin, you have to regrade those rear yards. So it's a lot more impactful. A lot of trees, vegetation, and things like that are going to be torn up in the rear yards in order to create a low point. A French drain, the reason we typically like these is those backyards kind of fall back to that rear lot line. So what you can do, it's a little less intrusive, is you can dig just like a few feet down, a trench, right? Fill it with pea stone and then wrap it in a fabric so that sediment isn't getting into the system, because that's what you don't want. You don't want sediment in the system. And then that would tie into a storm structure. Another option is a leaching basin. Essentially what you're doing is you're filling up a tank that has holes in it and it allows it to drain and infiltrate in the ground. As I mentioned, it doesn't work so well in a clay situation, right? Think of it like a bathtub. It's good until it fills up, and once it's full, it's not going out. It's just the drain's plugged, right? So it's just going to spill over. So that's what we find with clay conditions, and they found a way to kind of mitigate some of that, right? So, so leaching basins are very beneficial in sandy conditions. So what the Oakland County requires now, actually all the counties in Southeast Michigan, is when we go do a design, not for residential per se, but just like a development, we're required to look throughout the site and find locations that you might have sandier soils and try to strategically put your detention ponds, detention systems in those areas so that water will leach back into the ground. But so that's a big push that the counties want. But once again, you have a lot of clay conditions here, okay? So I might have got ahead of myself a little bit here, I apologize. So obviously catch basins are low impact, but you do need, as I mentioned, a single low point, so you do have to regrade the rear yards. French drains, low impact. They have limited capacity and they're prone to clogging just because over time, as much as you can do with it, it's still gonna eventually fill with sediment. The thicker the grass that goes over it, the slower it drains into that system. Another time where French drains, a lot of people don't think about is, winter conditions, okay? So you'll see a lot of flooding occurs when the ground's frozen, and then all of a sudden everything's kind of turning and starting to rain, but the ground's still frozen on top. So that water cannot infiltrate in. The grass isn't absorbing it, nothing's absorbing it. And that works as well with French drains, because the ground's frozen above that French drain, nothing's getting into it, so you're getting the ponding. So that's where catch basins are probably the most preferred method to allow for drainage at any kind of season. And then, once again, I mentioned the leaching basin. They are very expensive, large footprint, and they're only as good as what the soil is for it to infiltrate into. So just kind of get into what your communities, your neighbors are doing, so you guys have a good understanding of that. City of Berkeley, so pretty much every community does allow connection to their combined systems. The county allows that as well. It falls under your jurisdiction. If you're a separated community, so if you have sanitary sewer and storm sewer, you are not allowed to directly discharge into a sanitary sewer. But when you're a combined city, you have no other options, so they do allow it. So that's something that they defer then to the local municipality for that. So for instance, Berkeley, they do the inlet structure with a sump and trap. So I think I'll show it later, but essentially it's a regular drainage structure. They do a 3-inch restrictor. So essentially the intent here is to slow the water that goes into the system, right? All the detention ponds you guys see, you guys have all probably seen them on different sites. You're essentially trying to take a large amount of water that maybe would go through a pipe like this to flow freely down to a pipe like this. So what it's going to do, it's going to slow down the water from entering and surcharging your system, and it's going to back up temporarily. So in this instance, it would back up into the yards temporarily. So this isn't removing any standing water. It just holds it for a 24 to 48 hour period of time, slowly lets it dissipate back into the system. And then what they do is allow you to connect in the sanitary lead, and then they have all downspout splash on grade. So I'll get a little bit into how we connect. So you can connect either to a combined sewer directly or into a sanitary lead. So the cost differential, if you have to take a catch basin in the backyard, run it all the way to the front, you rip out sidewalk, maybe it's under the road, rip out the road to get to that, that's a lot of cost. So what these communities are wanting is for you to tie it directly into your sanitary lead. So you would dig up your sanitary lead, you'd run the pipe around, and I'll show an example, and you tie it into your sanitary. So the concern then at that point is, well, we don't want that extra water to get into our sanitary lead, then it's gonna back up into our house a lot quicker, right? So what they do is they put in backflow preventers, for those of you who are familiar. So essentially you would tie in, and then it just wouldn't let the water back up. So if it does surcharge that sanitary lead, it'll force it to back up and come out of the lowest point, which would be the catch basin in the backyard. It wouldn't go in directly into the basement. So that's how Berkeley handles it. Royal Oak, same thing, an inlet structure, sump and trap. They don't have any restriction. They just say a 6-inch pipe. So whatever can go through a 6-inch pipe that is what it is. That's how much water. So obviously, the larger size pipe, the more water that can go into it at any given point. And then Birmingham, same thing. They have no structure, or an inlet structure, sump and trap, no restrictor. Same thing, 6-inch pipe, connect to sanitary lead. And I'll back up to Royal Oak. They require a separate tap into their storm system. So they don't want even any chance whatsoever of that backflow preventer not functioning like it should, because it only functions as well as whoever put it in, and, obviously things happen, unfortunately. So I will say there's no guarantees on any of this. But I sound like an engineer there, but yeah, that's kind of how the communities handle it. You want to keep going, Hank?
Yeah, can I just want to point one thing
Yeah.
out, Brad, correct me if I'm misstating this. But when you have a backflow preventer is not dissimilar from the valve in your toilet, that when you lift the handle, the corky pulls up and allows the water to go through. When it starts to fill, the pressure from the water that's filling it, which would be the backflow from the sewer pipe, it pushes that into place and it seals it so that you don't get the water back in the same way that your water doesn't go from your tank to your bowl without hitting the valve mechanism. So it's helpful for that. And then as the water recedes, then of course the flow mechanism will allow that to go through. And I just want to make sure that you understood how the basic premise for that works.
Yeah.
Because,
It's a good illustration, I appreciate that. I'll use that next time.
okay, so I'm sorry, and you want the next slide? Let's go.
Yeah. So for instance, what you're looking at, you guys obviously look at plot plans and things like that here. So, this was a plan that was approved in Berkeley that I did, and essentially we had a rear yard catch basin, and we actually had to, because it was a new build. So this is unique, right? This is a new build. Obviously, that cost can get incorporated into a development of a whole home, which is easier to bear than to have people who have existing situations retrofit. That's where the big cost comes in. Here you have all the machines on site, everything's clear, there's no big deal. They're not working around trees, buildings, things like that. So there is a big difference from a new build to a retrofit. So essentially, like I said, the red line illustrates going around and then tying into the sewer. But as you can see, they had to tear out road, they had to tear out sidewalk and things like that just to tie that in. And then in this instance, because Berkeley wanted, at the time, I think they're kind of modifying the requirements, but followed the Oakland County ordinance. So essentially, they're making each lot have their own detention system in the backyards. So what they did in this instance was say, okay, we can do that, but you have a 2-inch hole. So however long that 2-inch, we would do a calculation. We had to hold the water for 48 hours in the backyard. For the amount of water that went, it took a 2-inch for it to hold for 48 hours before it finally drained down. So that's just kind of an idea. So the big thing that you guys need here, which any community that you're tying into a combined sewer have, and all your catch basins in the city have these, they're called traps. So essentially what you're doing, they serve two purposes, having a trap and a sump. So that sump acts as a place for that debris to fall. You know, you have sediment, it dissipates to the bottom. It's not getting into your storm system. So it settles on there, and then over time, your city is very good at, they go through, they suck out all the debris, you know, regularly just to make sure you're not getting that into the system. What that elbow is, that 90-degree elbow, essentially just, it restricts the gas. So combined sewers is sanitary, right? So you're gonna get that smell of gas from the sanitary. So by having that elbow go in underwater, it stops the ability for that gas to go in. Just like a trap in a house under a sink, right? You get that little thing, it's to stop the gases from coming in. So that is very important to have. And then you'll see that little notch, it says a restrictor. So what they'll do is they'll cut a little hole in the bottom of that pipe so that the water can, as it raises and comes in, it can go through that hole and then out. So that's like a standard. And then this is kind of something we were talking about. Typically, the cities would not be responsible for backups. So they have to hire someone like me. Every plot plan is required to have a sign sealed by an engineer or an architect. But they would have to design the stormwater system. They would review the cost, the design, the review, the installation would all be, and is in all these communities, the homeowner's responsibility. It's not something the city, hey, you have flooding in your backyard, we're gonna go fix it for you. That is, I've never seen that in my 25 years. Like I mentioned, homeowners shall submit sealed engineering design for review, and location of storm connection needs to be approved by the city engineer. And then that's ordinance stuff. But that's all I had, except the only thing I wanted to kind of speak upon too is like, we've been reviewing more and more plot plans, Hank's been sending them over, and some of the things that we look for on this when we design them and when we review them is a lot of these older houses or old builds, you build and everything would just sheet flow off the site, right? So what you're required to do, number one, is contain it on your site. You don't want to sheet flow directly, bless you. You don't want to sheet flow directly off your site with swales. So what we do is we require like a swale, an intercepting, you guys know what a swale is. So if it comes off the driveway, it hits a swale and then it'll go to the front or to the back. The difficulty, the challenge that designers have in this community is that you can't get everything from the back, and there's some instances where the back's lower than the road, right? So there is no way to get that water out without pumping or some other type of mechanism. So what we try to do is minimize the amount of flow that goes back there. So if it's a new build, it's a lot easier. We can, set a high point and try to get as much of it to drain back out to the roadway and out of the backyards. Another thing that, like I mentioned, you can't do, so you're not supposed to, if you're in your backyard and you've got water coming from other places, say I'm doing a new design, say I'm building a new house, is a design, and I'm designing it. And all these yards, I'm the low person, they're all coming to me. I can't just put up berms and stuff and say, sorry, that's your water, you keep it on yours. You're not legally allowed to alter the drainage pattern that currently exists now. So we have to take it. So then we have to design our systems to handle everybody else's drainage. So that is a big deal. I mean, every engineer knows it. That's standard practice. Every community, that's what they look for. Are you keeping your water on your own? Now, I'm going to talk both sides of my mouth a little bit here, because what happens is if there is no way for that water to get out and it ends up backing up, it could back up onto other people's properties. But by putting in a rear yard drainage system, now you're eliminating that, or at least the duration of how long that occurs. That's the key. So, you guys have any questions? I know I said a lot there. I talk a lot. I talk fast. I try to tell myself to slow down, but.
Yeah.
Does the city of Huntington Woods right now have a flood zone and plan? In other words, do we have like a high-risk impact area?
No, I mean, FEMA does not, based on my knowledge, we deal when floodway, and maybe Hank can speak to the sewer system, but floodplain floodways are more based on elevation, respective to a drain, respective to a river, lake, things like that. But yes, the city of Huntington Woods does not fall under any type of elevation floodplain issue, yeah.
Do we have a breakdown between percentage of properties with sand versus clay?
Oof. I mean, if you're looking at it, you don't have your old map here anymore with the city? Yeah,
I'd tell you that probably.
I'd say 20%.
Yeah,
15?
25%
Yeah.
to 30% max have sand. The rest have clay, and it's not just clay, it's blue clay for the most part, which is very, very dense and it doesn't infiltrate. One of the reasons that we have Ivan here is because there's options. Having said that, for a floodplain, and to help your definition a little bit, typically when you see surveys or you see grades on it, there'll be 650 in Huntington Woods, ballpark grade. You see a lot of 650. What that means is feet above sea level. So when you're seeing that, and it's measured in tenths, it's a little bit different thing, but you're starting to see what it is, and you can see where it's going. The lower the number, that's the way the water's flowing. The higher the number, that's not the way it's going, that's where it's starting, for the most part, unless the source interjects in between them. So when you have that, that's kind of what we look at. And when we send it to Brad, we send everything that's a new house for Brad. We used to send it to Tim, but Brad kicked him out and now he's here.
And I will say too, there's a misconception out there. When storm sewer pipe's designed, it's designed for a 10-year rain event, okay? That's what's required. It's not, you do 100-year for detention, and then you do 10-year for the storm conveyance system. So another thing that the county has changed in the last few years is the intensities. We're all seeing, and I think that's the big problem, we're seeing a lot more intensity of storms, right? They're coming in and they're just downpouring in a short duration, where before it might have been the same amount of rain, but if you're getting it over a day versus getting over an hour, your infrastructure could handle it better. So they actually have changed the calculations over the last, I'd say, 2 to 3 years with the new ordinance that allows or requires you to design for a larger intensity storm. So, but the problem is, and it sounds silly, but we're getting numerous 100-year storm events when you're only supposed to get them. A 100-year event means it's likely only one time every 100 years. We've gotten so many. The big flood that everybody knows about, everyone talked about, that hit every city and they closed the valve, they say the county did, but which wasn't the case. That was over a 300-year storm. That is like catastrophic event. And you're seeing it on the news all over the country. We're just seeing these crazy rain events. So we design to a 10-year storm event. That's what everyone designs to, and it's not like, hey, let's pick that, that's what's required, okay? So I did want to throw that out there as well, because once you get a bigger storm than a 10-year, it's going to back up no matter what. And that's why what we do that helped with a lot of the flooding, if you notice on all the road jobs, you'll see restricted covers. You see, if you go to other communities, you'll see like big castings with all these, a lot of slots through them. Here, we just do either 4 little holes or 6 little holes. The whole point of that is to, when we get those heavy road event, or rain events, it backs up in the road versus getting into the storm system that then surcharges and backs up to everyone's basements. So that's why we do what we do. We're trying to just move the water. We can't stop the water. We're just trying to reduce the impact on people's homes.
So one other thing, if I could too, and again, I'll ask for Brad's help if he feels so inclined to chime in. A good example of what happens is that the water goes downhill. It doesn't go to the edge of Huntington Woods and stop. It goes to a system that connects to another city, that connects to another city, and that's how that goes. So if the other cities are backed up, we're gonna back up. That's what happened in 2014. If you've ever taken a full Pepsi bottle and turned it over and tried to watch it drain, it just doesn't. You get a glug, glug. You get very little going through, and the bulk of the water stays in the container. So that's what happens, and as a result, it backs up. So you can't go smaller to smaller to smaller. You have to have a consistent flow. So by managing the city of Huntington Woods has cleaned out all their sewers. They've lined several of them. They typically replace when we do roads. If there's a concern about the condition of the sewer, that's the time when we would do that. When we do that, we typically can't afford to do more streets because we're fixing the ones, but we're fixing those ones right. So that makes a difference. But that's how the water, or that's how the sewage, water, rainwater, stormwater, everything, because we do have a combined system, that's how it gets from point A to point B. It's all through the same pipe, and if Royal Oak backs up, we're gonna back up. It's just the way that it is. So the only thing we can do is make sure our end is as good as it possibly can get with the conditions that we're given, and then hope the other communities take the same road.
Yeah, only as good as your weakest link, and wherever that is where the problem is. And to your point, Hank, yeah, the city has spent a lot of money on the infrastructure here. I mean, with the sewer lining projects, all the sewer cleaning and televising, I mean, that in itself has allowed for so much more flow in the systems and reduced the potential backup in the basement. So you don't see that too often with communities to spend that kind of money on this big of, or that large of a portion of their city, so.
I have a question, Brad.
Yes.
So you talked about the catch basin and you equated it to like the sewers that we see in the city and how the city comes and cleans it out of the debris. So for a homeowner, then, is that continued maintenance that would be required to keep
Correct.
that clean?
Yes, all maintenance would be required by them. And so what'll happen is obviously you'll get the leaves falling or grass clippings in there. I did this big house on a lake, very crazy, nice mansion type house. And we proposed, nice catch basins. They were actually lower than the lake level is how it was. So everything kind of ran back. And so they called me up years later, we're having all this flooding, what's going on, this and that. And all these big drainage structures that we proposed, they put in these little drains like this that we couldn't even find. We're looking at our prints, we had to go with the metal detector, they're all buried under the grass. And then we finally find them, like, well, no wonder why you're not draining, you're not maintaining your drains, you're not. And plus they said, well, we didn't like the ones you proposed, they're ugly. So they went with these little things that clog all the time. So they have gone back that since and replaced them all with the good ones and never had a problem since. So, but yes, that is a very, very important thing, is to maintain things. Thank you, that's a good point.
And then also, I mean, as far as, it's the homeowner's responsibility and the cost is borne by the homeowner, is there anything that would come back to city residents as far as a cost for, the way in which we're connecting to the sewer system, or like anything that would come back to residents generally via?
So like a usage fee type thing. We haven't explored that. That's, I want to say, and I don't quote me, I know Birmingham is doing something similar, because I think they have connection charges. So I think there's a setup to where if you add impervious and you can reduce the amount of flow, you can get some credits. City of Detroit, that's where there's a lot of problems. There's so much infrastructure there that's old. So they actually, you have to pay a usage fee for your site based on how much flow goes from your site into the system. And so when you redevelop a site, now you're doing detention. So you're taking and you're reducing it by 80-90% of the amount of water that drains in their system at a given time. So they reduce that credit by that much. So there are incentives by these larger cities to do that. But I would say it's very, very uncommon to charge people to connect into it.
I think one thing, just to kind of reiterate on that, if you're making a separate tap to the main, they would charge you for that, because it's a separate tap to the main sewer. If you're tapping your own lateral, I don't think we would charge for that. Again, that's a city commission decision, but that's your pipe on your property, your lateral. You decide whether or not you want the storm water, your backflow preventer. You decide whatever it is, unless it's decreed by ordinance. But having said that, my understanding of this would be is that if you tap the line in the street like you would for a new house or anything else, then that's a charge. If you tap your own lateral, that's on your property, that's different, and we were exploring not doing that, with the understanding that no decision has been made on that whatsoever at this point, and we still have to come up with something, and part of that will be not necessarily a recommendation of fees, which we maybe handle internally with staff and going to the city commission, but more so, what methods do you recommend? What methods are you comfortable with? And crafting that into an ordinance.
Right.
But the fees likely won't be included in this part of the ordinance. It'll be included in the fees section, which will be determined by the city commission.
And each site's different, right? There's no site that's the same. Some has different grading challenges, some have where you're connecting to the utility, some are in the backyard, right? That would be nice. You have a sewer in the backyard, it'd be a lot cheaper for anybody who's directly adjacent. And if you guys as a city implemented this and allowed this, it'd be cheaper for them to tie in than the people that have them out in the roadway. So we have to look at everything very unique. There's no one rule fits all situation. So we have to use kind of our judgment, work with the city, and use the parameters that are set in place by the city and say, okay, what are we going to achieve best to balance what's best for the homeowner and what's best for the city not to impact their infrastructure.
One of the questions, just to follow up with this, that would probably be in the ordinance, is city inspection of the maintenance and the catch basins. Are we looking to, would you institute or would you want to recommend? And the reason I ask that is if I'm building based on ordinance a catch basin and I'm not having the issue, why am I maintaining it?
Right. So I will say, I have not seen it at a residential, single-family residential level, lot-by-lot basis, but the county does require a stormwater maintenance plan. So any residential subdivision, I do a lot of residential subdivisions that are new, you do, the developer and once it's taken over by the association, they are required to, and it's something that's, it goes through the city commission, it's approved. And what that does is does allow the city or whatever community the right to, if they are having issues, if it's not being handled by them regularly, then the city has the right to go in there, make those corrections, and then back charge for that. And so essentially what that does, it's a maintenance, you're creating a maintenance plan. You're saying, after every rain event, you need to go check your catch basins. How many times do you guys see it this time of year where the leaves start going over the, over the casting, so things are gonna back up? But yeah, so there are mechanisms in place that are, it's really taking off, because this was always the thing that was said by developers. It's like, we've been putting stormwater quality structures in for 20 years. And they're like, we have never checked it once, ever, to maintain it, to clean it out. Well, yeah, that's a problem. So they've always used that as their excuse to not spend the money. But now, because they've said it so many times, all these communities are like, oh, okay, well then we're gonna make you do it. So here's how we're gonna make you do it, right? So, but yes, that there are mechanisms in place.
So that may be
One of
something.
the other
So-
things too is like if you have the backflow prevention valves, that's a flapper. So do they need maintenance from time to time? Do they need cleaning from time to time? Yes, they do. They can be put in outside of the house, which typically is not recommended because it's such a long tap, or they go right inside by the clean out. So when the water comes up, it goes in and stops right there and doesn't get backed up into the house. It's easier to put them on the inside of the house because you've got to break a little concrete rather than dig out a huge pit, put a Y and, you know, because you're still going to need a clean out.
And if I could piggyback that, the other thing that would be required as part of this, if they're tying their laterals, and I forgot to mention this, is they would have to clean and televise their sanitary leak. Because the last thing you want to do is, if you have a failing sanitary leak that maybe works with the amount of sanitary flow, it's very minimal. But if you're taking that stormwater and now forcing that water in there, any cracks or breaks could just come apart and create a big problem. So you don't want to spend all this money for the homeowners and it not function properly. So they would have to at least prove and televise that line to make sure it's in good condition. If it's not, that would be part of the replacement. They would have to do that up front.
And then the ordinance on how it's written in all the other cities is basically upon any action or permit pulled from, hey, I want to do an addition to my house, but I'm not structurally touching the property in the sense I'm going straight up. Would they then have to follow the city ordinance?
See, it's so much gray area. So Oakland County says if it doesn't exceed, if it's less than an acre, you don't have to do anything. No detention if you're improving anything. Each city has the ability to, obviously, and most do. Most have something a little more restrictive than that. Yeah, to get in the threshold of what would dictate to upgrade it or not would be something we would have to, as a group, work with the city and figure out. Yeah.
This is, no offense, the backflow valves, I think
Yeah.
everyone spent that, that's 10 or 15,000. And you're talking about drainage here and all these other things.
Lot of cost.
Quickly, you're in the $50,000 to $100,000 for a drainage system. And if I'm doing, hey, a $60,000 addition, I just basically priced myself out from ever doing any more work in this city.
Right. Yeah, I
I
mean,
want us to be careful on
Sure.
mandating. Like you said, there are scales, and that's why I was trying to get a flavor and feel for, hey, I hear we're 75% clay, and those are the biggest issues, but are we actually flooding out when we're only building a 10-year storm retention, and we're hitting 100-year storms basically every other month? So
Right.
we need to
You need to
be
find a balance.
cautious on cost
Right.
for the return we're going to get.
Right.
That's my 2 cents.
I think also, and while I think your concerns are very well founded, I think those numbers are a bit high. I mean, I think if you're doing an internal drainage and connect on a property, it could be a lot closer to 15 to 20 rather than
Yeah.
100. And I think also that.
which is a lot.
Yeah, well, it's
Still a
not,
lot
it's
for
not
a
cheap.
40,000 or 60,000 addition.
No
you're
question.
talking.
Or if you just want to do it because your yard exists in that condition.
Right.
So
100%.
you're doing that. Then the other thing is that on top of that, you would have to put in your backflow preventer, which is about another $1,500 to two, depending on who you call. So that's the kind of thing that you're facing for that. So again, this is part of the systems that he has checked with other cities. He knows what they are. He knows what they're doing. That's what they're doing. Just because you're going to see presentations, and believe me, you're going to see a few of them, that doesn't mean that that's the one. It may be that we offer a few into code so that you can do that, or it may be that you take the best out of, you make a 4-berry pie rather than just strawberry, you know? You have different components that can work, and then they can pick and choose whatever they want or that, but it's all going to depend on how the ordinance is structured. So again, my suggestion is, let's hear what everybody's got to say. Your concerns are exceptionally well-founded, because at the end of the day, you're asking people to spend money. So, but again, the city can't do it because you can't spend public money to cure private property woes. So we have to kind of do what we can do to help people out. The ordinance, by the time we're done with it, I have every confidence that you will have crafted a good ordinance. Matt will be here to review it with us. Brad may be back as well, just to make sure that he's understanding how things go. And then we want to make sure that at the end of the day, what we're prescribing is legal. And that would be helpful. So you want to make sure.
Can I ask a
Without going to
question?
the Supreme
And
Court.
then that's it. So,
All the plans that we approve then go through, you look at them?
No,
No, so
some
When we-
additions or some small additions or.
I'm
things-
saying like new construction.
New construction goes through Brad.
They've
Right.
been, yeah.
Okay, so that's good to know because like, yeah, I'm definitely not a rain
Sure.
drainage expert.
Right.
And I feel like there's been some miscommunication that we.
Review for that?
We
No.
approve everything
No.
and then it's like never looked at again and like we're causing some of these problems.
Right.
We've got a house right now that's been sitting with the plans were approved by the planning commission, but they can't get the NOAC and Frous site recommendations. In fact,
Yep.
Brad, I
Keep
think
declining
you got
it.
another one today that I sent to you.
And that's what we're reviewing for, is those type of things. It's,
Yeah.
you're not looking at it
It's
to that
good
level,
you
we
can
are.
assure
Right.
the community
Yeah.
that that is the case.
Right.
You're not expected to have a degree in engineering. He's got that.
Right.
That's what we pay him for.
And-
So we review that, the stuff that comes in that has, like for new construction, or depending on where the house is situated on the lot or which side the addition's on or that, we may still send additions to him. But for the most part, additions that are in the middle or in the back we don't send those.
Yeah.
Because there's no impact. Ones that go straight up on top of an existing foundation, we typically don't send that. We review that in-house because the roof hasn't changed. It's just 8 feet taller. So there's same amount of rain, same amount of everything, nothing else has changed. But there are cases like that where we will call Brad, have a conversation about it and see if there's anything that he feels that he ought to take a look at or we feel he ought to take a look at. But the goal is, the goal is always to come out with something that manages the stormwater to the best possible. And that's understanding that you can't help what the guy who had a house built 50 years ago, how his pitch and how his lot runs. But you can do something on a house where it's a new house and that, we do see those.
Right. Yeah, I don't think I've approved one in the last couple of years, the first time without any drainage improvements yet, so.
No, and that's again why we send it to make sure. So, there's one that you're on that's a third time,
Mhm.
so that's what it is.
Yeah.
We just flat out won't issue the building permit until we get him to say that it's okay.
And the good thing for you guys is that they tell me it can't be done. In some cities, oh, okay, I'm 40% municipal, 60% private. I design hundreds of these houses every single year. And so when they tell me, oh, you can't, I'm like, well, let's just see. So I'll kind of sit down and have him, show them, if you did this, did this, did this. I'm not putting my seal on it, but give them some guidance like, hey, this is improving this drainage pattern to not impact the neighbors as much. The other thing that we do on the notes, required notes, is, so for new builds, we make sure that the designer puts a note that says, potential for the rear yard to have seasonal flooding. Doesn't mean it's going to, but we feel that it's imperative for someone who's purchasing a house, who sees that on the plan, to know, to question it, or to say, well, we didn't know this was gonna happen, are we, right? So, because right now the ordinance doesn't allow you to tie in any of that rear yard drainage. So, there's times where there's no way to get it from the back to the front or any other way. So you're gonna get some seasonal ponding. So we add that criteria that has to be on their plan, because when you go through closing and everything, everyone gets a little plot plan of their house, and whether they read it or not, it's there at least. So it's a protective measure for the city.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, Brad?
Mr. Chair, at this point in time, I'm sorry, if she's got a question.
Yeah.
Then you have public comment.
Yes.
Sorry, just one more question. You had, during your presentation to the city commission, I recall you talking about, or there's a conversation about the number of catch basins or solutions within a block and sort of like the impact if everybody had one.
Oh,
Like that.
yeah.
So if you could just sort of speak to that.
Yeah,
for-
so, we have restrictions in place for each yard. What you couldn't do is, so say you have a block that everybody on that block, 40, 50, 60, 70 houses say, well, we want to put in the same rear yard drainage system so all of us can drain. Well, that wouldn't be good because that would overload the system. We would look at that more like a new subdivision that you'd have to do detention. So I wouldn't ever expect that, and that's, I guess, the concern, right? If you allow this, will every single person want to come in and put rear yard drainage? At the 15, 20, 30,000, I doubt that'll happen. It's cost prohibitive. There are other mechanisms out there that they'll speak to in place that maybe are more economical, and they don't create a surcharge to the system. So there's a win-win there, for residents and for the community. But yes, you hope that with anything, not everybody decides to do it, because that would be very problematic. If that happened, like one year everyone says, we all want it, we'd have to maybe write something in the ordinance that would protect you from saying no.
Right, so that was my
Yeah.
questions, or what I was trying to get to is that as the ordinance is written, we would want to set some restrictions
Yeah.
potentially as to the percentage or number of lots on that block that could do this.
Exactly. And we've done somewhere in other communities where it was single-family residential like this, and a developer came in, and they were probably 19, 20, 30 houses. Knocked everything down and built all brand-new houses, and in that instance, we made them do detention for that. But that was one developer buying everything. So that's unique compared to, I hate to say it shouldn't happen, but it probably would, unlikely. But you want to be covered, to your point.
Part of the thing with this too is, because you raised a good point, let's just say that number is 30% of the homes on a block, whether it's a block face or a block both faces, or say that number is 50%. There's going to be a point in time when you tip the scale and the scale is too much, and then water gets back into the people's houses that haven't done it or weren't able to do that. It could be that if you get more than X number of applications, that stormwater retention has to be considered if it's within a block or a 2 block. So do we have areas that we might be able to do that? Yeah, we do. We have like the boulevards, as they go through the street, whether it's LaSalle Boulevard, whether it's Newport, whether it's Meadowcrest. There are potential places that we could engineer something like that. It's not going to be available at every spot in the city because it just doesn't exist. But there are potential things. And again, when Brad was speaking to everything, not everything is the same. Not everything is the same. So we would have to look at it. It's fairly consistent in the Bronx subdivision, which is the middle. It's not consistent on the hill, but the hill needs it the least. And as we get closer to Coolidge, we have streets that wind and are not in a grid pattern, but we also have some areas that we might be able to do something, underground storage of water, gravel pits, for lack of a better words, that kind of thing. But again, we have to figure out what is going to be the trigger for going from point A to point B.
And I would say that the challenge that you guys are going to probably face if you do change the ordinance and connect is a perception. So it's easier for other communities that have always allowed this drainage. And if there's a bad rain and there's sewer backups and say basements, okay, it's another bad rain event. The challenge you guys have to overcome is for the people that say, because they're going to say, well, that never happened before. That's what they're, you allow one connection on the block. Oh, I never had a flooding, now I have flooding. It's that person. So that's the challenge that you guys will face, and I'm sure we'll face. But and to get a correlation, an exact correlation of was that the issue? Was it? You can't. There's a lot of factors that come in place. But I will say that will be the thing that I'm gonna probably lose sleep over with this is if it does rain hard and it backs up, it's no matter what, it's going to be this because you made a change. I know you guys all know that, but that's probably the most difficult thing out of all this.
Any other questions? Okay, we will open up the public participation for this subject only, and we'll limit it to comments, no questions, and 3 minutes. Just come out up to the podium. State your name and address.
Not sure about the no question part, but just a little bit confused. On the one hand, Brad, you talk about containing it on your site. And then next you say that you're not allowed to change existing drainage portions, so if your neighbor's is higher than yours, you're just in tough luck, is that right?
So I'm saying with new developments. Yeah, if you're doing a new development and any water that came to you, that has come to you, and you can't block any drainage that came to you, is what I'm saying, with new developments.
So what about Huntington Woods? So if I have a neighbor whose property is higher than mine, and they're flooding my backyard, that's my problem or their problem?
If it's an existing condition, well before any ordinance was implemented with this new stormwater ordinance, then unfortunately it would be however the water drains is where the issue would be.
Are you saying that based on the law, or what are you saying that on?
I'm saying if you make new improvements, you can't alter it. I'm not saying it's an existing condition. Like, someone can't come in and, if they build a whole new house and then just have everything drain right to you, they can't do that.
I don't, so, somebody next door builds a tennis court or a baseball or a basketball court and a patio, and all of a sudden, my yard is being flooded. Is that my problem or their problem?
Well, during the design, they should be conveying that water as much as possible. So that's where,
As much as possible?
well, because let me explain the difficulty they have. Is,
Helpful.
so like, let's say you have a house here and your yard drains like this, right? Okay, backyard's always lower, okay? So the person next to you is building a house, and right now under the current ordinance, they're having to tie into your lower yard here, let's say. It's not your fault, it's just the existing condition. They have no way, if the city doesn't allow any connection to the sewer, then that water, they have to match your property line that naturally falls this way. They can't build their whole yard up like this and tip everything that way. They can't create a division where your yard's here and their yard's here, a big wall that separates it and spills everything out. So they're tied, but now, to match yours, and then you allow for a storm connection, that water that drains back there, it no longer will go off onto your site, it'll go into a catch basin that then can get routed to the sewer.
So, can the city require them to put in a catch basin or a French drain? Do I have to put in the French drain?
No, it's only under new construction that can be implemented. So if it's an existing condition, like, say your neighbor's living there for 2 years, or anywhere, like now before this ordinance, if there's, under the current ordinance, no. But if there's an ordinance modification, someone comes in and builds a house, okay, then yes, they would not be allowed to, you wouldn't have to put in a French drain for them to build a new house. They would have to do it.
Not talking about new houses, talking about existing houses.
Okay, we're at 3 minutes now.
Okay.
Yep.
Try to answer
Thank you.
that question at some point.
Yeah, no, I guess I'll just answer that is, if it's an existing condition, we can't force the neighbor to put in a drain for an existing condition. Because right now, the ordinance doesn't allow you to tie into the sewer. So they can't implement something to drain it but there's no mechanism in place for them by law to do that. So I hope that answers that.
Any other public participation?
So, what he talked about tonight is 38-63, prohibited connections.
We get a name and address for the record, please, the minutes taker's not
Susan
here.
Confidant on the south. So I would really like to encourage the city to implement number 12 from the master plan and launch an education awareness campaign and promote personal management on people's own property. You know, what we're seeing is bigger and bigger houses, and you push the back of your house back, and then you have a smaller yard where you only have to maintain 50% of that. I'm also seeing when you guys have plans come before you, you're not taking into account the driveway because they haven't submitted their driveway permit yet. So you don't know which way that's sloping, which way the water's going. So I would encourage you to look into some of these cities like Oak Park they're actually, it's pretty simple these days with satellites and AI to measure which way the roofs are going and which way the driveway's going, and they actually map out a stormwater footprint for each property. So the other thing too, I noticed, I started looking at homes of people who have come here to complain about water they believe is coming from other neighbors, adjacent neighbors. And so I'm looking for, was a drainage study done? Was an as-built study done? And so one person who complained, I found this was Brad's predecessor, Timothy Germain, on the pre-built, it says, add a note to the plan that states that the future homeowner shall be made aware that standing water may collect in the southeast corner of the property seasonally, as this is the low point of the property. well, is it possible that it collects in the southeast and goes to a neighbor? So maybe they should be looking at that a little more closely. I don't always see the attention taken to the neighbors, which is also part of that. I also couldn't find an as-built survey for it. And then, I don't know if I brought it to all of your attention, I brought it to the city commission. I saw a house where the as-built survey shows the downspouts at the front of a garage at the minimum setback for the property, and I drove by and they're at the back of the property. So you've got residents moving their downspouts around. I have a resident behind me who moved, Brad proved their whole garage is giving me water, but somehow it's not enforceable. And so then all they did was once they added downspouts that weren't supposed to be there and they got caught, they put like a 20-foot downspout extender to put it back to the front where it drains backward anyway. So we're getting a lot of temporary redirected, a turned downspout does not necessarily mean redirected water. A redirected downspout, hopefully Brad could teach you guys about that. A redirected downspout does not equal redirected water. In all
Thank you.
cases. Thank you.
Okay, any other public participation? Okay, we'll close public participation. Thank you, Brad.
Yep, thank you. And I'll stick around for theirs in case you guys have more questions.
All right. Presentation from Ivan from Great Lakes Landscape Design.
Give me just a second to get this up here. And I'm gonna actually, we got this working, so I'm gonna give this to Ivan, the clicker.
Oh.
So you can move your slide.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you very much.
So, Mr. Chair, before we get going on this, I'll take the opportunity to thank Ivan for coming down for this. He's had contact and he's offered some different types of systems that Brad didn't talk about. So again, as we go through this in order to craft an ordinance, we're going to bring people through that have different concepts, different ideas. Ivan owns Great Lakes Landscape Design, and he's also a Huntington Woods resident. But he's been talking he's done projects in other communities, and I don't want to steal any of his presentation, but he's had success. So with that, Mr. Chair, we should listen to what he has to say.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to do this. And as you'll see right here, you'll also see in front of you Great Lakes Hydrology Systems, which we'll talk about a little bit more. I've got a brief agenda here. We're going to go through some introductions. We're going to talk to you about green infrastructure examples that we're talking about and emerging technology, and then allow for some time for question and answer. So as Hank said, I've been a resident of Huntington Woods since 1998, raised both my children here. It's an important community for me and my business as well, which I established in 1989. We're an award-winning design build firm, and we also provide maintenance. We've served hundreds of residents. I probably have, I think, about 1,600 conservatively addresses in our database. So again, Huntington Woods is an important community for me, not just because I live here, but economically as well. And we also are the record, we do the maintenance for the city services right now. So last year I developed a company called Great Lakes Hydrology Systems because, as we know, this is an extremely hot button topic. It is enormous, and it's not just in this community, it's in every community that we touch throughout Oakland County, Wayne County, Livingston County, and it's definitely something that's going on. And we established it based on, actually, ironically, because of a new construction home in Huntington Woods, and we're going to talk about that emerging technology. So we have a company. My company is just over 50 employees currently, and they have a range of 1 to 23 years in tenure. So one of the things we're going to talk about is that what we do as a company, in no particular order, we have several people that we partner with, okay? One of them is NDS. The stormwater management industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. This is not small stuff that we're talking about. It affects residential communities, commercial properties, industrial properties, you name it. It touches every property of what we have here, right? We have Mother Earth, we have water, and water wins, right? So if you're the low person, unfortunately, you lose. But the question is, how do we mitigate that? Just because somebody's property is naturally lower doesn't mean that they should lose. So NDS is a company that manufactures a lot of the products that we're talking about, okay? We bring them in on an annual basis, once if not twice a year, and all of our technicians and our employees, including my support staff, are certified in stormwater management. So this is something that we're pretty passionate about. Scott Corneau and Bob Adair, they are the principals at a company called Convergent Water Technologies, and as I continue to learn more, these gentlemen are spec engineers. So they're the gentlemen people that come in for larger properties, larger communities, and they are specifying specific products in order to mitigate drainage issues. Ferguson is another, they're a multi-billion-dollar market cap company. We work with Cassandra Hopp. She's an extremely intelligent individual who helps us educationally, and then Jeff is a sales advisor for the company. And we've been working with them, and they work with other communities throughout the country on their ordinances and stuff. So I tapped into theirs a little bit for this presentation. We'll be bringing them in later this week to do lunch and learns where we work with them, just so that we can stay ahead of the curve and figure out how to really help people in the community. And the last one on here is XLTerra. So XLTerra is the emerging technology. They're a Hazel Park, locally based company, and that I was introduced to actually because Noah and Frost reviewed a plan for a house that we did a design for, and ironically, we had a stormwater management plan. There was some confusion, but then this company was brought to us, and we're gonna talk about that technology. Andrew Nimzik is the scientist who developed the technology, and they have a patented product, and Frank is an entrepreneur. And I also have Calvin in the room, and he is somebody that helps us and assists with the designs in the implementation of the stormwater management technique that we're gonna talk about. So we have, basically, we're gonna talk about the traditional options, right? And a lot of what you were hearing are what we call gray infrastructure. That's our stormwater systems, and they're combined, and nobody wants you to tap into them. And we had to disconnect our downspouts. Where do you put the water? Where do you run your sump pump? What do we do? That's gray infrastructure. What's great about that is it's a known. I know that I can move the water from point A to point B, and I have a source that can handle that flow of water. Versus green infrastructure, which has a lot of benefits, right? It's great for our environment because we're not taxing these storm systems, right? We don't know, we all want to believe that somebody shut a valve off because it's easier to believe that somebody made a mistake than it was a 300-year rain and it overflowed the system because it wasn't designed for that, right? It's hard to conceive if you're not doing it on a daily basis. We talk to people about this all the time. We're all very good at our jobs. We know what we know on a daily basis. You know, when you shop for milk, you know, on a weekly basis, you can see the price changes. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, most people don't shop for stormwater management multiple times during the year. So it's our job to educate them on what the opportunities are. And that's a lot of what we do. So I've been in business 36 years, and I've done a lot of work, as you know, in Huntington Woods. And the backyards are flat. And you can't put the downspouts, and they go, and then they backfall, and they wash into your home, and they get nothing worse than a flooded basement. Where do we put them? So that's where the green infrastructure comes in, right? So there are what they call 10 pillars, right? And we talk about, there's two different concepts, right? Storage and infiltration. So storage, like a stormwater system, where does all that water ultimately end up? We talk about things like rain barrels, cisterns, where now you're seeing retention, stormwater management, where they're holding the water and then they're reutilizing it. Green buildings, LEED certified buildings. Downspout connections, where do those go? What's the capacity? There are calculators that we use that tell you, based on the X-rain with the square footage of the roof, this is what your capacity needs to be. And a bad day for me is when we have these heavy storms. I wake up in a cold sweat because it's like, how many calls am I gonna get? Because no matter how we calculate it and then we over accommodate for that, it still may overfill because now we had 3 rains in 3 days. And then we have a year like this year where we had, in June, I think it was 13 days over 90 degrees. So completely different year versus last year, right? So then you hear about rain gardens, bioswales, natural landscaping, right? Wetlands are important to our community and they're very, very well protected. Porous pavements, things like synthetic turf. Some communities deem synthetic turf non-permeable. Now, I have data sheets that say, no, this stuff's permeable. It's meant for this. So every community is different. Green roofs, you know, and in America, we're way behind our people in Europe because they're utilizing a lot of this stuff way more than we are. Now, in Michigan, it becomes a little bit more of a challenge because of our climate and our zone. But still, there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of different things that we can do to mitigate these things. So when we talk about storage, storage is underground essentially. This particular product is one that was developed, and this is a, you know, Ferguson sells this particular one, and these are called R-tanks. And, you know, somebody kind of brought up the subject, you know, Hank, you said it, a berry pie. So how do we combine all these different things in order to come up with the best solution? Because no 2 backyards are the same. I've been in probably 1,500 backyards in this community, and it's kind of fun to go see all the different homes and the architecture, but they're all different. You know, there are some that are sunken that you would never know until you get into the backyard. But these have voids, they have storage space, right? And then we can combine them. A lot of people talk about French drains. It's kind of a hard one for me to listen to because what is a French drain? And with the internet now, you can do a lot of research. There's a lot of information out there. You know, but a French drain is really simply just a pit with gravel and a piece of pipe in it. But what capacity does that have? Does it really have a capacity? So when I was sitting in this one winter, this was really one of the first products I found. And that's a flow well leaching system. So these storage systems that we're talking about, they're closed systems, essentially, that leach. So they have a capacity. This little 2-foot diameter drum right here will hold 50 gallons of water. Now, it also, when you run your downspouts to it, it has no static connection, right? And then, you know, they talked about the catch basins. Brad talked about the reason those are so great is we will not do a system where we close and we have a static connection at your downspout because that eliminates the airflow. So there's a lot of different contractors out there, and you'll get 3 different proposals at 3 different prices with 3 different solutions. And how does a homeowner decide? And that's the best part about the internet. Now, you can go and look at all this stuff on the internet and find out, right? I'm not making it up. I learned the hard way. I used to static connect, and then I'm like, oh, it doesn't work. Heavy rain, it comes right over the gutter, sits right at your foundation of your home, and then it gets into your basement. So by putting in these catch basins, they have a 4-foot area for silt and sediment and debris that gets through. Because dirt is airborne, debris is airborne. You may not have any trees, your neighbor has trees. Gets on your roof, goes down your downspouts, gets into this drain box. But there's 4 inches of a reservoir before it exits. I have a lot of clients. Some were at 3 times a week to keep their properties. They have an unlimited budget. Most people don't have that. Most of us live on a set budget. So, but these are very easy things to clean out, right? A shop vac, or you could do it manually with your hand. There's not a ton of silt and sediment, but I would agree with the questions that you guys are posing. It is important. Where are they putting the catch basin? What's surrounding it? Is it mulch? Are they over mulching every year? Do people ever clean out their mulch? We have clients that at a certain point, you have to clean it out because it just keeps building up and building up, and it does decompose, but these are all important factors that you need to consider. So that's storage, right? You know, and then we kind of talk about infiltration, and this is a product called Focal Point, right? So you can see in a really, really tight area, and when Hank talks about, you know, LaSalle Boulevard, like you could create this in LaSalle Boulevard. And it could be incredibly beautiful using different plants, the water-loving plants, that help absorb the water. But now we're combining multiple strategies. You know, these are engineered soils that have data behind them that show what they infiltrate at. And then they use the reservoir cubes that also have a storage capacity, and then there's clear graded aggregates underneath it that also allow for storage. So again, no two cities are the same, no two projects are ever the same. We don't know until we get out to somebody's house. We do a lot of projects, and our project starts somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,500, and, excuse me, I've had, larger properties where they're in the six figures. And it really just depends on what we're trying to achieve. And a lot of that is the expectation of the client. How long do you want the water to sit there for? Right? Well, I don't want to see it ever. Well, that's a different expectation than, well, if it sits for, 2 hours, I'm fine. Right? I just want my kids to be able to play in the backyard. They can't even play in the backyard. It's constantly wet. And I've seen it all. So, I think it's a combination, right? It's called the triple bottom line, we call it, right? The environmental benefits, the social benefits, and the economic benefits. So that's what green infrastructure is all about. And I think it is. It's a combination. How do we protect Mother Earth? How do we reduce pollution? How do we keep the water quality good? How do we have green infrastructure in the city? It's important here, especially we have a lot of parks, right? Are these places that we could leverage for some other opportunities? But what is the cost to the community in all these different ways? So now we're going to talk a little bit about the emerging technology. This is something, again, I started a whole company about it. I invested in it with equipment. We're outreach. We are actively doing work. And we just had a crew come back from Denver for a project for Owens Corning in a detention pond. So the product is called JEPS, and that stands for Groundwater Energy Passive System, okay? So this is a passive system. This means once it goes in the ground, it's in the ground, there's no maintenance to it, okay? So product overview. So let's talk a little bit about the product. It's a polyethylene extrusion, okay? That is what it looks like there. Forgive me, I literally have them in my car at home. I brought some for you guys to take a look at. But it's got the fins, it's got a core, and then it's got what's called a diaphragm that goes onto the top of it, okay? Now that piece, what we're gonna talk about is how it actually works. This is a patented product. We also have a booster unit. And the diaphragm actually physically keeps the water from traveling through the actual fins and the core, okay? And as I said, it's a polyethylene material that will not biodegrade. It's not exposed to the environment ever. Multiple units, we do it in different lengths, 5 foot, 10 foot, 20 foot, and 4 foot. When we put them in the ground at 20 foot and 4 foot, they're coupled 3 at a time, okay? So look, we're gonna talk a little bit about, so the way water moves through soil, most people think, well, hey, when it hits the sand, it's gonna go really, really fast. But because of capillary pressure and the barrier, that is not what actually happens. It actually starts to move horizontally until it can get through and saturate, then it starts to push through the sand, then it starts to move again horizontally, and then it'll start to push back through the next layer of soils, okay? So that's kind of what you would think. It's a long video, but that's pretty much what happens. So let's talk a little bit about JEPS and what it does. So it's not irrigation, and it's not drainage, okay? But what we do is we restore the equilibrium of Mother Earth. We've done all this building and all this construction. You've got compaction, you've got different soil types. Some sites, the soil gets stripped off and then it gets brought back in. But what the JEPS does is it provides the hydrostatic conductivity. It brings the soil and it brings the water down, okay, through the soils. Infiltration rates, we've seen an increase of up to 10 times. And because we put them 2 feet below grade, we're allowing for the natural water or any of the groundwater to filter through the soils, okay? And then it goes down along the JEPS, and then it disperses into the natural hydrology lines of the earth. So when they're creating these patterns, which we'll talk about, they are looking at hydrology maps of your individual site. Every site is different. We cannot help every site. A lot of that goes to something else we talked about, which is permeability of sites. One of the residents mentioned it. What is the permeability? That's a big deal. That's why we can't have all homes with just concrete. It's not sustainable. So one of the byproducts that we're finding of this is not only does it help us, to mitigate water and infiltrate water, there's a golf course that was done with our product in France, and they are seeing a 50% reduction in water usage. Because when it's dry, what happens is that we have the hydrostatic conductivity in reverse, meaning it takes the negative pressure and it brings the moisture and the vapors up to the root systems of the plants. One gentleman actually did not water his greens all year, or his fairway all year, and that fairway actually looked better than the ones that he watered. So it's pretty interesting. So how does it work? So basically the diaphragm on the top provides a squeeze force, okay? And this unit, think of like a tree root that's kind of constantly growing and moving through the soil. This unit, as water in the ground gets wet, it expands, and so it expands and it forces the fins to contract, okay? And then it moves the water laterally, but it brings that water through hydrostatic pressure down into the natural hydrology of the earth. And in dry conditions, as you see, as it expands back out, the vapors come all the way up to the top of the surface, which is providing nutrients, water, and vapors back to the soils, as well as the root systems of the turf grass. So we talk about installation parameters. Every site is managed individually. So this is a layout to the right that you'll see of a golf course fairway. To the left, what you're going to see is what the volume of influence is. So when we drill a hole 40 feet deep, it's got an influence of 106 feet in diameter by 40 feet deep. And then so on and so forth. So 53 feet for a 20-foot depth, 26 and a half feet for 10 foot, and 13 to 14 feet for a 5-foot hole. And then the boosters go approximately 3 inches below grade, and those are like a permanent aerator. Have you ever seen when they aerate your lawn? Looks like the geese have just gone through the lawn, or on a golf course if you're a golfer. And basically, it allows for soil compaction to ease back up. But the boosters that we use are permanent. And so what they do is they're under that same constant action of the earth where it's expanding and contracting, so it's constantly aerating your soils and allowing for the water to move freely from the surface to then go in through the JEPS units. So you can see those, that's a classic diamond pattern that you see there. And like in a situation like this, the number that there are the least of are the 40. So you can see the spheres of influence all overlap and then create the infiltration areas. So one of the other great things about it is it's very, very low impact. So this is a machine that's called Hazel, for Hazel Park. And basically it's vertically drilled, approximately 2 3/4 inch hole. And so we basically walk away, we've very, very minimal waste. If we pull a core plug because your lawn's in really, really good shape, we just put the plug back in. You can't even tell that we were there within hours of us completing the job. So it's minimally invasive versus a lot of times where we're coming in and then we have to replace all the sod for someone, all the irrigation systems. And that's not to say that we don't hit irrigation lines or rocks below the earth. It's just to say that, we know with certainty when we're excavating with an excavator, irrigation lines aren't marked by MISTIG, and there's no as-built plans created for them as a rule of thumb. So it becomes very, very difficult. So there is an acclimation period with it. It isn't a design where, the next day you're going to get instantaneous results, although, the reports we get in the field is obviously we're drilling these holes and putting them in right away. Our guys are seeing the conditions underneath their feet are improving immediately, but what we like to set the expectation for is that there's an acclimation period, 3 to 6 months minimum, and it varies by property and by conditions, you know, we've had, like I said, we had all that dry weather. So what's the hydrophobicity, it's a big word, I had to look at it, of the area, like in that time, or are we doing it during a freeze-thaw cycle? Because it's gonna change and have an impact on that, on the acclimation period. So basically, when we're doing this product, you know, what can you expect? You're gonna have less standing water in a wet season, right? You're gonna improve your infiltration rate considerably. And basically, it doesn't matter what the composition of your soil is. You know, the people up on the hill over on Henry, they don't have to worry. I've dug over there, it's pure sand, pure sand. Southwest corner, blue clay, right? Blue clay, and you're gonna have to deal with it. So when we're excavating to do these dry wells and the storm chambers and all that kind of stuff, we have to excavate all that material and then we have to dispose of it off-site. Now, we try to recycle as much as we can, but again, you know, it's difficult to do that and it's at a cost to the environment that you have to do. So what we found in this is very, very minimally invasive, low demand in terms of waste, it's almost minimal. Recharges your groundwater and reduced, pollutant runoff, and then long-term reliability. You know, because once we put it in, there's no additional maintenance. So we do have projects, like these are some of the projects that the product is designed for. Obviously, stormwater management. The job that we were out in Denver for is a failing detention pond. The infiltration wasn't happening, and so we've gone out there, and we're still, we just finished it, last week. So we're looking for the results, but we had to do it in two phases, because when we got there, it was loaded with water. So we had to dewater the whole entire thing before we could even get started. But we're able to do a lot along the perimeter and some of the inclines. But basically, they're already seeing the benefits of it. Sports fields, parks and gardens are the obvious ones, golf courses, residential backyards, Detroit City Airport. We've worked with other communities here that we have worked with, Pleasant Ridge, Hazel Park, Birmingham, to name a few, the Detroit City Airport. We just did our project. It was our first for them, the Troy Schools. We did a project for them in June, and this is their second project that they've done, with us, meaning we are now the authorized installer for the state of Michigan through XLTerra. XLTerra did their own installations, and now we're handling all the local installations for Michigan. And then we're traveling to do these. We're working on building a relationship with Owens Corning as well right now they have a lot of plants and stuff that have water issues where it's standing water. So that's pretty much the emerging technology that we found as a result of a job that we were doing here in Huntington Woods. It was something that I literally was like, well, what is this? Not mad that somebody else had a solution, but, I got to find out about that. Because it's changing, right? And we don't know. We literally, Ferguson, NDS, they have these calculators right on their website. This roof is this big, but then how do I know the neighbor? I got to, us and my salespeople, we have to look. Is this neighbor's downspout pointing this way? Does he not have any downspouts? If he has no gutters on his roof, that water's going somewhere. Where is it going? And after it, just think of a sponge. Once that sponge is full, that water has to go somewhere. And unfortunately, the low person does lose. It's just inevitable. And we see a lot of it. We see every possible scenario, and when it does rain and rain heavy for several days in a row, certain things, what are your goals, what are your expectations, and what are you trying to do with that water? So with that, I'd open it up to any questions, and I have some other stuff in the appendix that if you bring it up and I need to show you guys, I can go to those examples.
Any questions?
I had a question. I know that because it's a new product, we don't know exact numbers, but what's the expected lifespan of these?
Well, it's polyethylene, so, I mean, way past my lifetime would be the funny answer. But it's not exposed to any of the elements. It's gonna be below grade. So I know that the VersaCort, the sport court material, that's also polyethylene. They warranty that for 20 to 25 years above ground, even for fading, but it does fade. We're not worried about fading. We're not worrying, I mean, Kevin, is there a, other than,
I'm pretty sure the warranty itself says 20 years, but they're designed for well past that.
yeah, I mean, there aren't any products in the ground. What's the oldest product in the ground?
Oldest product went in the late 90s, so it's still there.
How do you charge, like, per square foot? Or like, is this reasonable for homeowner, like?
So, that's a good question. So like anything else, like brick pavers or whatever, we look at materials plus markup and then labor. Because we sell labor is what we really sell. But to give you specific examples, I've done backyards. We did about 8 backyards this year, and they ranged in prices from $8,000 to a larger 1 acre backyard, I think was $28,000.
Okay.
So I've done calculations and illustrations side by side because we believe in it, but it also treats a larger area.
Yeah.
You gotta remember, stormwater management, we're moving water from point A to point B. With this, we're treating a much larger area per cubic foot, and what I'm learning is that's what, especially as we move into the commercial realm, they measure everything by cubic foot. So our solution is somewhere in the $5 to $7 roughly per cubic foot versus what we're competing against in the market right now, which is $15 to $18 a cubic foot. 15 to 20. So, I mean, I went to a stormwater conference just to meet all these people and figure out, it's a whole nother language and everything because, then you're dealing, with engineers and we need to get the data. So we're still in the process of collecting all the data. I will tell you that the lowest hanging fruit for us, standing water, sports fields in Pleasant Ridge, I think that one's underneath parking areas. I know Berkeley right now. This is the roofing plant out at Owens Corning. This thing was full of water. Here, this is the Hazel Park Community Garden. I went, before I invested, I went and looked at all these places. That picture was at the beginning of my presentation, I believe. But I mean, it was standing water. It was a bowl. And now they've got it to be where it's, where it's dry. And I was there after a really, really heavy rain.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt for a moment.
That's the
Schwartz
community
has
garden
to
right
leave
there.
early, so,
If you could excuse my
Yes.
attendance, please.
you still have a quorum.
Yes, still have a quorum.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
For your attention.
So you can see here, this is that community garden.
I have a couple of questions. Hazel looks like a pretty big piece of equipment. So is this something that the average homeowner in Huntington Woods with their small backyard would be able to get that equipment in and use it as a possible solution for them?
We have to bring in Maisel. It's a much smaller machine that would fit through that door behind you. Literally. True story.
Exactly.
Another question, like the difference between, again, a residential backyard and a giant, soccer field as far as trees and tree roots, and how do tree roots or the placement of trees impact the ability to install the equipment?
So that, I mean, we take that into account, obviously, because we have a background in landscaping, but for the most part, when you're drilling around the trees, it's not as damaging because we're not we're drilling vertically. So a lot of the times when they're doing trees, they do what's called vertical mulching, where they're drilling vertically or in and around the tree roots. So we're doing our best to avoid them. We're not going to be able to avoid the fibrous roots, but we're also creating an area where the roots by opening up those holes where they can continuously grow.
So would the tree roots then in theory grow around the product? So as the trees continue to grow and these are in the ground for decades?
I mean, in theory, we can't stop them from where they're gonna grow. I don't know the answer exactly
As far as like
based
the
on
life-
experience, but
As far as the lifespan of the product, because the question was like, how long does the product, is it good for, like what the warranty was? So do tree roots grow through them and then destroy them and then they no longer serve their purpose?
as a rule of thumb, the tree roots tend to typically grow horizontally, where they're, where we see problems with pipes and stuff like that as they find the breaks, they find the connections and stuff like that. Whereas this, because the pipe's under constant pressure from the earth, it's less of a concern
Okay.
than anything like that. And a lot of times when we're doing in the plans, we've got photos of the site, we've got satellite views of the site. If we have a troublesome site where there are that many trees, we bring them out, the people that do the actual plans, so they can have the site characterized.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just one other thing too, Ivan, perhaps you can enlighten us to this. It's my understanding that trees can drink up to like 70 gallons of water a day. So this, in that situation, you may not put these rods so close to the tree because that particular area is already being managed. But you would concentrate on areas that are not being managed, perhaps complementing the tree roots. If that's not correct, let me know.
No, I mean, for right now, the jobs that we have done, we haven't been in that close of a proximity to a tree. There is another product that we have, which we aren't talking about in here, but, because it's not storm water, it's actually called NEPS, and it's a nutrient energy passive system. So we're actually using that particular product to bring the natural nutrients from the earth back up to the root systems of the trees.
And then this, I think maybe is more of a question for Hank. So is a solution like this something that require a modification to a city ordinance? Or is this something that today a homeowner could put into place in their yard?
This is something today that a homeowner could place into the yard because it doesn't connect to anything, like, it doesn't connect to any sewer systems. It doesn't connect to the house, and it's in the ground in their yard. It would be no different than a pool going into the ground, a structure of some kind going into the ground, with the benefit that these are not considered a structure, are not considered detrimental to the property, but in fact could be very complementary to any existing topography or any existing conditions that exist on the property. So we don't regulate that as of yet, but I will tell you that I have gone through, I've been to Ivan's business and I've seen a presentation on this, and also talked to Ed Klobuchar, who is the city manager for Hazel Park. I think, didn't they do a ball field or something as well? I know they did a city park.
They've done a couple parks.
Okay,
The
so-
Pleasant Ridge did the ball field.
Okay, that was Pleasant Ridge. So,
That's this park right here, Victory Park.
so those we know work on a larger scale because we have examples that are within 10 minutes by car. As far as backyards, as Ivan alluded to, that market's just getting going. But having said that, the technology is still the same, whether it's on a larger scale or a smaller scale. And I did see his two machines, and they are radically different in size. So one could easily fit in the backyards in Huntington Woods. So it's possible to do this. The costs that he mentioned are not out of line with what it would cost to put in a French drain or anything else of that nature, and perhaps Brad can speak to that a little bit too. Assuming, and the evidence so far indicates that this does work, then this is a player in the game. And that's something that we might want to consider. And it's not necessarily that we make an ordinance to allow this, it's that we consider that when we're educating our community, and I talked actually today with Susan about educating the community, that we put all this stuff out there, because there's stuff that's not going to require a permit, there's stuff that residents can do. And I'll talk to Ivan about putting his presentation on the website, but having said that, this is information. These are things that, I don't know if you've seen it, but until he introduced me to it, I hadn't seen it. So this is new technology, and there's about 3 or 4 different things that he spoke to today that may really help us, particularly on acre lots. And as he alluded to, this came to my attention when we looked at a site plan, and Brad looked at it too, and we were like, what is this? So we found out.
Right. And that's a challenge that they face, right? Us engineers, we have a way that, the gray system, we know what works for how we've done it forever. So whenever we see new products like this, we get kind of nervous because, well, if I approve this, right, oh man, what's going to happen, right? There's always that risk. We're very conservative people. But when you have situations where there is no way to accomplish something, the amazing thing is you get people like themselves, like their companies, that their goal is to find a way to fix a problem that no one else can find an answer to, right? So you have an ordinance in place that doesn't allow connection, okay? Well, then let's find a solution to that, right? That's what they do, and that's what's pretty amazing. So, the reason I like this so much is because you're not making the connection to the system. It's quieting those concerns that a lot of people have is, okay, are you overloading the system, this rain event? It isn't gonna be, it won't act, and if I speak out loud, I apologize, it's not gonna drain as fast as if you had a couple catch basins, but it's gone, right? But the benefit that you're getting with this is you're not surcharging systems, you're creating an environment that works year-round, it's better for the soil. I mean, there's so many benefits to it outside of what we look at as just regular engineers, So we've gone to a lot of presentations as well. It seems to work very well, but like you said, engineers like data. So that's where we want it to work for 50 years. Well, if you waited for everything to work 50 years, then things are already gone and technology's changed, right? So that's where we struggle a little bit.
And the excavating, I mean, like the school, the kids have no playground for the next year.
Right.
And the whole thing's tore up. I'm like, how come nobody had a conversation with your company about this before they tore up the entire Burton field?
It's school property.
Well, but I would say the challenge.
Right, but I mean,
We've
school
had
yeah.
conversations with them, but this is how they chose to do it. It's
Yeah.
school property.
And they could probably speak to the challenges of, like, the stormwater ordinance. So I think it's a great candidate for the situation that you guys have here with the rear yards, where, and this is my lack of knowledge, I'll say, is with your system, with looking at it globally like a large-scale commercial project, like to eliminate detention versus put this in, right? You can't. So you're going to balance. You're going to utilize some of this to help offset some of that, right? And that's where some of the challenges is because it's newer. These code books, stormwater books, ordinances aren't written to say, here, utilize this. But they're really going that way a lot. I mean, I mentioned infiltration in the new ordinance. What they're doing is going to help offset a lot of that cost. So what we're finding is, not so much in a residential use, but it might reduce a developer's cost 20 to 30% because they're meeting that criteria of stormwater infiltration and things. You can speak more to it. I don't mean to.
I mean, you're spot on, and not only that, not only can it reduce their cost, but if it reduces the physical footprint of a detention pond, and now a builder has 3 more lots. What do you think he's more happy? Now your community can have taxes for 3 more homes. I mean, the possibilities are endless, but it starts with the data.
Right.
Right, and that's kind of where we're at right now. Like this is our literally I bought the machine, started getting the training in October of last year. So we've already done, a considerable amount of installations. And so, it's been, and of course it was bone dry all year after we got all the installations in. But so far, our results have been positive. We just had some rain.
It comes on the education that they have to do to us that approve these systems, right? That's the challenge that they have.
And I think one other thing too is that you're starting to see these, like with the other cities, like Pleasant Ridge is using it, Hazel Park is using it. Just to remind everybody, Rackham is not supposed to have water hazards. So there are places that are local where this might make a big difference.
And we've pitched to them, but right now, like, it's been dry all year, they don't
Yeah.
have the problem.
So, and that's okay, but,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
having said that, there's still, you know, there's still places that are local that would work for that, you know? I would have loved it if the school had decided to use that, or if Rackham decides to use it, it would make it easier for us to say, okay, I saw it work. So, right now, we have to rely on Oak Park, Pleasant Ridge, and what they've done, to show that it works. And I'm sure that, like, if we asked, Ivan might be able to find out, was it clay in those cities? Was there soil similar to what we have here? And I'm sure that it's probably gonna be very similar to what we have here. So, that's just another thought. The intent with this is to bring other avenues of stormwater management to you to consider, so when people come in, well, have you considered this? Have you considered this? These questions become a lot more meaningful when we know what's out there. So, therein lies that. So, Mr. Chair, if you have any questions.
Yeah, my only question is, like, it's hard for me to visualize the size, like, even just for the airport here, it's probably a little better for Pleasant Ridge or Hazel Park, I can visualize, but like, just for example, on those few projects, can you know, what type of system did you guys put in there? Like, did you guys go down 40 feet?
Well, typically, there's always at least one 40-footer.
Okay.
If not more, and a 40 and a 20s are usually the beginning and the end of the run, because then it then goes down and, you know, theoretically in a backyard, right, that, the 8 to 10,000 range is where we're running for a 50 by 125 lot, like a typical Bronx, like our neighborhood right in here. That backyard, a smaller backyard, is gonna be in that. The biggest difference is that I may be a similar price on a stormwater management plan, but I'm actually treating a larger cubic foot area because I'm going down much deeper. So there is, the whole point of the plans that are designed, we don't do the designs for the systems. You know, Kevin happens to be one of the people that does the designs for us. He's one of the experts over there that goes through their whole process to determine, and we have had a couple jobs because they lacked permeability that we weren't able to help. And then I have to go back to some of these other options that we talked about, right? And then understand what the expectations of the client are in order to be able to come up with a solution that meets all those parameters. But I do think that most of the jobs that we've done side by side, we are either at par or less. I did a Red Run golf course. I did an illustration from them, stormwater management, traditional drains, 135,000, we were 80. But again, I gotta get people and convince people to be the first one. I was quick to leap, but, you know, not everybody is as quick. Like, it made a lot of sense to me right away because of how much of this I do, to the point where I believe, like, this is an important part of our business for moving forward, because gotta be dealt with, right? And now, you can't build a home here, in a new construction home, without having it. And the job that I did the proposal on, the JEPS was in around 28 to 30, and the stormwater management with downspouts, drainage, rain gardens was in the 40s, mid to high 40s. So it was, you know, and again, you're treating a larger area, you know, and then you're also not inviting more water on, because a lot of times, if you can't build up, that means you have to accept, and then if you have to accept, then that water is coming. Water is coming onto that property. I see it every community, every day on a regular basis, multiple times a day. Multiple times a day. You know, and then as a part of the association I'm on, we do judging for awards for landscaping, and drainage is a huge part of it. Did you account for it? How are you accounting for it? Can we smell the standing water? When it's bad, it's bad. So how are you dealing with it? Because then plants don't like to sit in water if it's the wrong plants, so then they die. So then, you know, what we're trying to protect isn't being protected. And that's why the maintenance part, I do believe, is important. You know, you can have an ordinance on how many trees someone has to plant, but then nobody monitors if they're taking care of them. Or if they died and then did they replace them? Nobody monitors that, really. So it's a, you know, for us, it's great because we maintain too. So, you know, we want to make sure that we're taking care of the full life cycle.
Yeah, how do you check to make sure?
For this particular thing, all we can do is go back and photograph and take pictures, because it is below the grade, that's all
Right.
we can do at this point.
If there's no water, it's working.
Right, right.
But there are
But I mean,
also
like, that
ways,
the parts are, like, that I guess that's how you know.
so there's a survey equipment that you can actually, after it would be done, correct me if I'm wrong, we could go and mark where each one is and create an as-built as well, and we would know where they're at. So we're have a couple projects for the city of Oak Park. We're trying to work with them on, it gets complicated because it's at Nora Field, behind the field there, so it's not just, it's the city, and then it's the school systems to Hank's point, and then they're like, yeah, we'll go out, we have the equipment, and we'll just make sure we know where it is, because some things are gonna have to get done afterwards. But if we have a plan and we know where everything's gonna be, like this place down in Detroit, we would just eliminate them from the areas. And then again, to your point with the trees, we would try to avoid them at all costs, but we have a product that can help the trees too.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay, we'll open it up to public participation. And again, we'll limit it to 3 minutes. Take your comments.
You're up, good. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Is this going to be recorded and posted soon, this presentation, this meeting?
Probably tonight.
Okay. I'm obviously going to recommend people look at this presentation, and would recommend City Commission see it as well. And I certainly recommend that it be made more available to the community at large, because we don't know what's going on. We're not alone in this. Have you seen the 2017 stormwater management plan of the city?
No, I can't say that I have.
Have you guys? Are you going to implement it? It's on the city's website under environmental sustainability.
Okay.
Worth looking at.
Winter reading.
Any other public? Okay.
I'm going to offer Ivan a picture from my house because it's worse than any of those. So thank you for the presentations. I just want to remind everybody of the simpler problems from your 2023 draft minutes where Hank said, stormwater management as far as does your garage even have gutters on it, you know, that type of thing. If they do, if not, you know, you're just shooting sheets of water onto your neighbor's property with a gable roof, that could be happening. So I really would like you to think about, if you have a garage at the minimum setbacks of the property, is there any reason they should be allowed to have downspouts at the back? Is there any reason? And if on this setback, should they have to prove that they're getting their water to the street or dropping it in the back and routing it around? So also Hank is a more courteous neighbor than some people in my area. He said, you know, my neighbor's lot is 1.5 feet lower than mine, so I take downspouts around the back and discharge them in the back of the garage so it doesn't go near their property. Is that going to stop everything? No, but it stops him from having to deal with my stormwater from my garage, you know. So I've heard you guys, or I've heard, and Hank has said you can't purposely direct your stormwater, but it should be, you should be purposely containing your stormwater. And I don't know if you can see from here, but like we get these ballooning houses now with a tiny bit of grass. And this was, Ivan said something good about what is the stormwater capacity of the yard. We should be encouraging people to manage it in their own yard. Because I talked to a driveway contractor recently who he told me he tries to get from the garage apron, meaning the part in front of the garage, all the way to the street versus trying to run some of it into the backyard. So I hope you guys have had a chance to go into Google Maps and just scroll around the neighborhood and look and see, look at some of these backyards and like, whoa, how'd they get that patio in there? And if somebody calls to complain that they suddenly have water they never had before, look up and see, this would be for the administration, was there a new driveway that appeared? Did somebody put in a basketball court without a permit? So, you know, I know the city can't fix people's problems, but they can enforce the code. I know they can't come and fix my property, but they can enforce the code. I had the code guy come out, I showed him just that same thing, a garage that just shoots toward my house, and he said it was not a problem. So I really hope you work on the code and the enforcement and consistency in the enforcement. And again, you've got to watch those driveways when a new house comes up, because they're not showing you the high point of the driveway. And I mean, here's another thing, I'm just going to show it, because Brad's here. Brad proved it, like even more.
Okay, we're at three,
We
we're
are
at 3
not an
minutes.
enforcement
Yeah,
body,
right.
so, like,
Okay. Okay, but it's on you guys too to watch, and when like this new house, this house that's coming up tonight, they've got a huge patio, combined patio garage apron, make sure.
Thank you, we're at 3 minutes, thank you. Well passed. All right, any other public participation? All right, we will close public participation. Hank, for the matter of site plan review for the addition at 10415 LaSalle, do we have the applicants?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the gentleman has arrived.
Okay.
And we could discuss the house. You can. Mr. Chair, at this point in time, we can let John go ahead and describe this project. I will point out that there was a significant amount of changes from the last plan to this plan. We did have an opportunity, both Francesco and I, to meet with the gentleman, and there's been some changes. There are also some changes that were not represented on the plans that he needs to make in order to get him to the square footage bonus that he has. So any motion tonight should in favor of the project should include the addition of the mutton bars, should include the addition of the wood windows clad, and then he already had a height bonus that he was getting for that. So having said that, thank you, Ivan. Thank you. So the bonus that he was getting for that, he does get the 250 square feet, which he needs to do that. Having said that, he's allowed his 2,400 square feet, and he's at 2,398. So he has made it. The last time he was here, he was at 2,669, and that was due to an error in calculations. But we did actually scale the whole project, and what had happened was, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, but
There's a double count.
the addition was counted twice.
That's correct.
So that's where the calculations came in wrong. So once we did that, and even at the 2,398, those figures can subtract another 35 square feet for the staircase that wasn't deducted from that. So you can deduct the staircase on one floor, so that's usually about 35 square feet. So he is in that. So having said that, here's the numbers that we have for this. The particular house is 2 stories, allowed 30 feet, it's 21.5. The front yard is 25 feet, it's 24 feet 9 inches, but it's existing, no change, and there's no exacerbation of the front yard setback, which already exists. The side yards required 5, total 14, 8 foot one side and 12 foot total, which is not minimum 5, total 14. But it's straight up, straight back.
Correct.
So he's not encroaching any further on the site, on the side yards. So they do allow for that. The rear yard is required at 30 feet. He's got 58.3%. And then the lot coverage maximum permitted is 30%, and he's at 23.7%. And again, pointing out that this is just over the existing footprint.
Correct.
Is all this is a second floor addition. So the math that we have for there, he did call out, and we did have in our conversation, he's using the Anderson 400 series windows, which are nice windows. It's a wood window, it's clad, and it meets the criteria. The purpose behind that particular architectural detail was windows have varying sizes and dimensions. If you take a look at vinyl windows, the rails and the stiles, which is the outside components and the crossbars, excuse me, are wider. And that's because the material doesn't hold the same strength as wood. So when you see wood, a wood window, it's typically narrower and there's more glazing area, so you see more glass. So it appears less about the framework and more about the glass. It's a more attractive look. Excuse me. So the lots on both sides of him are 50 by 125 lots. The square lot area is 6250 on all three. The house size, 1874 on the one side, 2359 is what actually his house would be with the share deduction, and then 2500 on the other side. So he falls right smack in the middle, where before he was going to be the biggest house out of the three.
Yep.
So that's not the case now. So the one house on it says I know it's a single family, but that's how they listed it in the Oakland County records. But it's actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the colonial.
Correct.
And then you have the bungalow, which is this house, and the ranch, which is next door, which is on the corner. So it works out that differently, but, okay, so that's, the two is flipped. It should be 2 stories on the west neighbor and 1.75 for both his house and the house next door.
Yes.
Exterior materials are aluminum and vinyl at the 10425 address, brick and siding on his, and again, brick on the house on the east side, which is the Meadowcrest house. All the garages are detached. So, again, the last plan, our commentary was, this project as a whole does not meet the standards that we look for. All the windows are removed on the left and right side on the first floor. In addition, shows no windows at all on the sides. There's a substantial departure from fenestration to design standards. Staff recommendations to revise plans as the survey, and because it was missing a dimension, and the plans are deficient in meeting the requirements of the ordinance, and it needs a variance for size. It no longer needs a variance for size because we verified all the dimensions on it, and the corrections to the plan square foot have been made. Changed the elevation to reflect windows, although I will say that the windows on the elevations have a multitude of different window sizes, so it's not consistent in that regard. But he did put windows in on the side, so again, that's something you might want to ask about. That's fine. Downspouts are shown on the plan now, and the survey has also added the correct dimension lines. If you have any questions, completely happy going over any of that with you, as I'm sure John will. Mr. Chair?
Start, Jessica? Any questions you may have?
Yeah, I'm just trying to read the proposed elevation. So, where it indicates the new brick wall fill-in, so that was a window being removed.
Correct, yep, the kitchen's running along one side, yep.
Right. And so some of them then include a new window, so I think that's what the size is play, so that part of those areas are being filled in, and then smaller, differently shaped or sized windows are then being placed in there.
Yep, and then we added some windows on the proposed elevation, second floor, pardon me, on the sides as well,
Okay.
that weren't there originally. And just one other thing I wanted to add, if I could please, is that the siding on this home would be the hardy plank, not vinyl. Hardy plank is more of a traditional lap-looking siding, and it'll come out of, it's manufactured in a factory, and the product that we use would be painted in the factory, so when it's out on site, it goes up and it's done, so it looks finished right away. And it has like a 25-year warranty on that. The other thing that I spoke with Hank about was we were going to box out the windows
right, with like a piece of 1x4 around them. Right now, it just shows siding going up to them, but in order to achieve the look that I think we were going for, we were gonna just profile those out with like a 1x4, and again, that'll be hardy. So the exterior of this house can be maintenance-free. And that's kind of great, so you don't ever have to worry about paint peeling or anything like that, no matter, who lives there or whatever. So that's kind of a nice thing, but they're real high-quality products. And the hardy plank is also good deterrent for woodpeckers, which have become a real issue now for the last couple of years for me.
And then as far as, so addressed the lack of windows that existed in the prior. And then as far as the sort of eclectic collection of windows that we have in the new plan, so Hank, just for clarification, and that is really just a design
That's a design
issue. It
thing.
doesn't impact anything from an ordinance perspective.
Well, again, here's the thing, he just really has to meet the percentage for the addition. He can't really fix what's downstairs, but then he took windows out.
Right.
So our conversations with that were, well, if you took them out, now I've got a blank wall, you gotta put something back. So this is what he did. So when you take a look at it and understanding windows and placement and design, one of the things you wanna look at is what the inside is. So are you putting windows in a closet? Are you putting windows in a shower to make them windows? Are you putting windows in a kitchen right smack in the middle of it that's not signed over the sink or anything like that? So those are considerations that you want to take into effect when you're taking a look at this and seeing what it is. The goal with the windows and the 20% fenestration was to allow a bonus for putting in the windows, okay? So he doesn't qualify for that bonus. That wasn't what he was going for. But he did make his bonus without using that as a criteria, but still, he put windows in because, quite frankly, my advice to him was that, you may not live on the outside, but your neighbors do.
Right.
And so they have to look at something other than sheer walls and sheer, sheer brick or sheer siding with no fenestration, no breaks in the architecture at all. And with all due respect, they're not trying to look into your property. They just should look at something that's more architecturally appealing. So while one side is seen by everybody, three sides are seen by the people that will look at them the most. So that's why we did that. So when he took into the consideration, and John, you might want to speak to this, but what we've done is, or what he's done is, he's put a window in on the proposed first floor plan where the washer and dryer area would be.
Yep.
He's put one in the kitchen.
Yep, kind
Like right at the top where you'll see where he's got the two towers and then he's got the glass in between. That's 2 2x8s. That's not the size of the window, that's the size of the header.
Yep.
So, but the window's new there, so that's why he needs the header. And then he shows another bench, where it says bench and cabinet.
Right.
He's showing, new windows there, so he's got two 20/20 windows. And when you read those are 20/20s. So that's 2 foot, 2 foot. So that's why you're getting into to try to get some light. And while these aren't the most opportune places to put windows in all cases, they're there and they afford some fenestration on the side, and it brings him closer into compliance with what everybody was trying to accomplish. And he's got kind of the same thing going on the other side where he's got transom windows and the brick fill-ins. He was able to incorporate something on that side for that. On the second floor, you see he's added windows. And the second floor, not wanting to say it this way, but I'm gonna, is that the second floor looks better than the first floor with what he's got going on. The risk for the windows, when you remove windows and you brick in windows, of getting a brick match and a grout match is minuscule, that you'll get that perfectly. So by able to put some windows and put some glass in there, you take away and you minimize some of that. Because there's two types of grout that you would use to fill that. So you've got to match the grout and you've got to match the brick. If you don't get if you're only going to be able to match one of them really good, match the grout, because otherwise really calls it out. So, but having said that, the brick that he's looking at is a fairly common brick.
Yep.
And he should be able to find that. But that's the window. So again, you're looking at rooms. He put them in the bedrooms upstairs, so there's new windows there where there weren't before. And you can see a lot of what he's done. And the proposed second floor plan really shows you where the windows are in relation to what the architecture on the inside is.
Right.
So I hope that helps. If you have a specific question on a specific window, I'm certainly happy to take a whack at it, as I'm sure John would.
Yeah, no problem. No, we did do some redesign of the kitchen in order to incorporate the windows after our last meeting when I was tabled, and I appreciate you doing that instead of denying me. But we went back and did that and tried to, get it more in keeping. I did drive around the community, and I do see some houses that, depending on when they were built and that, they have smaller windows than that, so. But I think we have been able to source the brick for the house, so that's kind of great news. We can be able to go ahead and do that. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll perhaps remove the brick from part of the house where it's already been weathered and everything, and we take that brick and put it in the windows where people can see it. And then in the backyard where they don't, we put in the newer stuff, and it'll fade in kind of quicker. So we kind of do best efforts there to minimize that kind of patch quilt work that you might end up with, so.
My question has to do more with the thought process on the varying sizes of the windows. So for example, the left elevation, you have a 30 by 20, and right next to that, then you have a 30 by 40. And then underneath that, then we have a 20 by 30. So and then next to that, we have a 30 by 30. So just visually, and that's only the left side, then we go to the right side, we have one that's 26 by 30, and then right next to it, we have a 30 by 20. And then next to that, it's a 30 by 12. So I don't have the measurements for the existing windows, but the thought process behind these various measurements, I'm just wondering, I understand you need to put new windows, but is it because of where they're located? Or-
Yeah, it's where they're located and kind of what's going on, like, if you look at the floor plan, sheet 3, you can kind of see on the kitchen, or I guess it would be the left side, the varying sizes are because we have cabinetry involved, we have a bench in the front involved, so we're trying to get as much height as we can out of the windows, but we're confined by certain things like countertops and cabinetry and things like that. On the other side, you have the primary bathroom. Pretty much don't want to ever put a full-size window in there. You want to keep that as a transom. The walk-in closet's another area where transoms are more utilized, so you don't eat up a lot of the shelving space in the clothes hanging area. So that's why they're kind of jumping around like that, is because of the inside layout of the home. And as I mentioned, last time I came here, and rightfully so, the windows were not there, and that I totally get where Hank was coming from. And so we went back and we redesigned some of the interior things just so we can accommodate some windows and break up the wall basically from just being looking more like a fort than a house. So that's why we did what we did. And also with Anderson 400 series, those windows themselves are nice to look at, and their transoms and everything are really nice. So I think at the end of the day, it'll be interesting, not weird.
Any further questions?
No.
Questions, please?
So Hank, you said that the downspouts are not reflected here. So just so I understand, because Brad was here earlier, if we approve this, it will still go to him for final sign off on,
Not on this, because this is not a new house, this is an
Okay.
addition.
okay,
So on every plan that comes out of here, and has been for a while, there's a stamp that goes on there that says that they're responsible for maintaining their stormwater on site. So, or not directed towards their neighbors, and I forget the exact wording, but it's a stamp about this big. But the fact that they, just because it's an addition, it's not, the roof is the roof, it's just higher. So your square footage of roofing is the same, it's taken it and it's gone up, you know, so that's pretty much what it is. So he's not putting any more water on the ground than he would have if it was all still on the first floor. Having said that, the water that's on the first floor still can't be directed towards the neighbors. So this is an opportunity for him to make the downspouts not direct towards the neighbors. And on these 50 by 125 postage stamps, on which I live on one, that's important. So he can't direct it towards them. If he's directing it onto a driveway and the driveway is directing it to the neighbor on the other side, you shouldn't be doing that. So,
That was addressed in the plan,
Yeah.
per your request, yep. We addressed that in the plan.
we
can you just point me
believe
to
that
where
that's
that's
okay, but
directed?
I'm sorry?
Can you just point me to that?
Yeah, I think it was a cross-section here. Just give me 1 second, please.
you can see it on the elevations too.
Yeah, but there was a,
Page 5.
I think it was 5, but then there was a, you have proposed
I see it.
plan, and then you can kind of see the kick out at the bottom of the elevation. You can see the kick out towards the back, meaning not going next door. And that's on,
And the point with that is also the difference between 30 feet is required for a rear yard setback, and he has 58 point something, you know. So there's a real good chance for infiltration of the water into the ground, as good as you get in the Bronx subdivision.
Nothing else for me, thank you.
Sarah? I have no questions.
Just maybe a more broader question, Hank, when we have this, we have a plan, it's not going to Brad, but this does give the opportunity for, when we're approving and doing the inspections, to look at where gutters are being placed on the new addition and things like that. I would assume, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we, not only that, the addition's still got to pass the building inspector. So there are so many people that see this before he gets signed off on it. So he's still got to give us the 2 copies. Even if you approve it today, he's not approved because he doesn't have a building permit. So he's approved for site plan approval, he's still got to get a building permit, and that's got to pass the Michigan Residential Code, which Dwayne administers. So when we do that, that'll be the thing. Then, at the final inspection, which there's a myriad of inspections to get to the final inspection, which Dwayne walks around, he looks at the inside, he looks at the fit and finish, he looks to the extent he can, because you can't really say you can't do workmanship anymore, you used to be able to. But you can do the outside, and where your downspouts are, is there anything here? You know, did you crack city sidewalks? Those kind of things are all looked at before they're signed off on it. When they go to do the house, it's like anybody goes to do anything, we get a bond. And the bond is not necessarily to make sure that they finish the house according to plan, that's to make sure that they don't damage any city property. So that would include directing water over our sidewalks, pop-ups too close to the sidewalk, somebody slips and falls on it, cracked sidewalks from trucks or machinery going over it. The guy's got a crane to lift trusses, okay, where's that going? So those are things that, Dwayne would look at on the end of it. But it's certainly stormwater, because it's becoming more and more of an issue, he would look to see where that's going.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that as well. Any further questions? Entertain a motion. Oh, public participation. You're okay. Getting late at night. Open up the public participation. This agenda item.
I'll just
Great, thank you for talking about stormwater, and hopefully that huge patio garage apron was poured with a permit and wasn't back later. I don't know if that gets checked as part of the planning process.
It already exists.
I know it already exists, but I think I saw in previous minutes from you guys, you talked about only when you have a time where you have to address new issues, can you look back at old things that might have been overlooked? And what if it exists without a permit? You know, we're finding that, where people put in a basketball court and there's no permit. So, it's always a good, that's all I want to say, is this is a good time to check if something was off before, for stormwater management. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public participation? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. And the chair would entertain a motion.
I think I'll make a motion to approve with the condition that the mutton bars and the wood window, what did we say here?
The wood window and the trim.
And the trim, thank you, are properly marked on the
Yes,
plans.
understood.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Would you like your plans?
I appreciate that.
Those are now become big documents.
I know you guys know, but these two are, I work in 5
I
counties.
think that's yours too.
Multiple townships and cities and villages. And they're good stewards of this city. You're, yeah, good guys here.
Appreciate it.
They understand the rules and why they are the rules.
Just ask us, we'll tell you.
I was doing a job in the village and it was like, you know, what was, I asked, well, what do you think the spirit of the rule is? And they all looked at you and that's kind of not good. You know, you have to understand why
Why they
we
set it
have
up.
square footage at a certain thing and all that. And these guys got it. And I know you know that, but I can't.
Appreciate
He
you.
wasn't easy. But there's an appreciation. Francesco's awesome too, so.
Appreciate the feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hank, just the only question I had,
Yeah.
outside the agenda,
Yeah.
is just love to see the progress on the traffic light, and do we know,
Full speed ahead, mass
Yeah.
numbers, we're waiting for those to be delivered, they'll go up. Most of the electronics is completely done. You see the pads and post bases are in. You see that we've also closed off the 11-mile
Right.
entrance, which has been huge for us. And I think that we're probably looking at the end of November, I think we're gonna be on schedule. Rawhorn's doing a really good job with us, and DTE so far appears to be happy with it. So I'm just excited to have it. I mean, I remember being on the planning commission talking about doing this. So that was like 25 to 30 years ago. And I was asking the same questions, and yet here we are, and today it does. And a lot of times it shows that if you have your stick-to-itiveness, you'll end up getting it. So this is another thing that I can't even begin to tell you how happy I am that the planning commission played a part in this. And particularly having kids that played Frogger across 11 Mile for years to get to Berkeley High School, it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And it'll also have a great calming effect on 11 Mile. And anybody that's tried to pull out onto there, you know, right now with 696, you're kind of taking your life in your hands, but this is going to be good. It'll take a little getting used to, but it's going to be good. And Berkeley is on board with us.
well, I'll echo the gentleman, and thank you for your perseverance for the last 25 years for the traffic light as well. So, anything else? Hearing none, I hope entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second?
Okay, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, guys.
Favorite motion of the night.
Hey,
When's Newport?